You're in your 40s now, and somewhere between the morning coffee and the evening silence, you started asking yourself a question you can't quite shake. Is this it? Not out loud, never out loud, but in the space between meetings, between scrolling, between saying you're fine when someone asks how you've been. You've done everything you were supposed to do. You showed up, you worked, you built something that looks like success from the outside, but inside there's this quiet hum of anxiety that won't go away. Money comes in, but it also goes out faster than it used to. The mortgage, the kids, the car that needs fixing again, the subscription you forgot to cancel, the vacation you keep postponing because there's always something more urgent. You're not broke, but you're not free either. And that's the part that keeps you up at night. Because you thought by now, by this age, things would feel more certain, more solid, more like you're in control. But instead, it feels like you're managing, always managing. Managing expectations, managing stress, managing the gap between where you are and where you thought you'd be. You look at people your age who seem to have it figured out, who talk about investments like it's casual, who take time off without guilt, who seem calm in a way you're not. And you wonder what they know that you don't. What decision did they make that you missed? What door did they walk through while you were still deciding? You tell yourself you'll start next month. You'll fix your finances next quarter. You'll finally get serious about building something that lasts. But next month comes and it looks a lot like this month. Because life is loud and urgent, and the things that matter most are never the things that scream the loudest. So you handle what's in front of you. You put out fires, you keep things moving, and the bigger stuff, the deeper stuff, the things that would actually change the trajectory of your life, those get pushed to tomorrow. Again. Tomorrow is where your dreams live now. Not because you're lazy, but because today is full. And you're tired. Not just physically. Tired of feeling behind. Tired of starting over. Tired of watching time move faster than your progress. Your 20s were for figuring it out. Your 30s were for building. But your 40s? Your 40s are where it all comes together or falls apart. This is the decade that decides. Not because of age, but because of inertia. Because the habits you've been carrying, the patterns you've been repeating, the comfort you've been choosing, they compound. And in your 40s, you start to see the bill. Not all at once, but in small, quiet moments. When you realize you can't retire when you thought you could. When you see your kids growing up and you're still not where you wanted to be. When you feel your body reminding you that time is not infinite. When you look at the next 10 years and realize they'll pass just as fast as the last 10 did. And if nothing changes, you'll be 50, then 60, still saying next year, still managing, still stressed, still waiting for the right moment that never comes. But here's the truth. The reason you're stuck isn't because you don't know what to do. You know. Deep down, you know exactly what needs to change. You need to stop spending like you're still in your 30s. You need to start investing like your future depends on it, because it does. You need to build systems that work without you, so your income isn't tied to your hours. You need to say no to more things so you can say yes to the right things. You know this, but knowing and doing are not the same, and the gap between them is filled with one thing: comfort. Not the comfort of luxury, the comfort of familiarity, the comfort of not having to change, the comfort of staying who you've always been, even when that version of you isn't taking you where you want to go. Comfort is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It just makes everything else feel harder. It makes discipline feel like punishment. It makes sacrifice feel like loss. It makes delay feel like logic. And year after year, it keeps you exactly where you are. You've been negotiating with yourself. I'll start after this project. I'll get serious after the holidays. I'll make changes when things settle down. But things don't settle down. Life doesn't pause. And every time you choose comfort over action, you're not just delaying progress, you're practicing delay. You're reinforcing the identity of someone who waits, someone who plans but doesn't execute, someone who wants it but not enough to be uncomfortable. And that's the version of you that will carry into your 50s, your 60s, your 70s, unless you break it now. Because here's what no one tells you about your 40s. This is the decade where you either become who you're meant to be, or you become the person who almost did. The person who had potential, who had ideas, who had time, but never pulled the trigger. And the tragedy isn't failure. The tragedy is living with the quiet knowledge that you could have, but you didn't. Not because you weren't capable, but because you weren't willing to be uncomfortable. Wealth isn't built on income alone. It's built on decisions. Small, unglamorous, repetitive decisions that no one sees and no one celebrates. Decisions to save when you want to spend, to invest when you want to enjoy, to delay gratification when everyone around you is indulging, to work on the business instead of just in it, to learn what you don't know instead of pretending you do. These decisions don't feel powerful in the moment. They feel boring. They feel like nothing. But compounded over 5 years, over 10 years, they become everything. And the people you see who are calm, who are free, who seem to have it figured out, they're not special. They're just consistent. They decided once and then they honored that decision 1,000 times, while everyone else kept deciding over and over every single day. They just moved. They didn't wait to feel motivated. They didn't wait to feel ready. They didn't wait for the perfect moment. They just started, and they stayed. That's the difference. Not talent, not luck, not timing. And consistency. And consistency is not a personality trait. It's a practice. It's the choice to show up, especially when you don't feel like it, especially when it's inconvenient, especially when no one's watching. That's where freedom is built. Not in the big wins, in the small bets you place on yourself every single day. And your 40s are your last clean shot at this. Not because it's too late after, but because this is the decade where you still have energy, you still have time, and you still have leverage. You can still build something that pays you for the rest of your life. You can still learn a skill that changes your income. You can still shift your habits before they become permanent. But you have to choose. Not next month, not next year, now. Because every day you wait is a day you train yourself to wait more. And waiting becomes who you are. You start to identify with it. I'm just not good with money. I'm not the investing type. I'll never be one of those people. And the moment you accept that identity, it's over. Not because you failed, but because you stopped trying. You gave yourself permission to stay small, to stay stressed, to stay stuck. And you called it realism, but it's not realism. It's fear dressed up as wisdom. It's comfort disguised as logic. It's the voice that protects you from risk, but also from reward, from growth, from the life you actually want. Discipline is not about punishing yourself. It's about respecting yourself enough to keep the promises you make when no one's watching. It's about becoming the kind of person who does what they say they'll do. Not because someone's holding you accountable, but because your word to yourself matters. That's power. That's freedom. And that's what your 40s are for. Not to coast, not to survive, but to decide, who are you going to be in the second half of your life? Someone who played it safe and stayed stressed? Or someone who bet on themselves and built something real? Someone who waited for permission, or someone who gave it to themselves? The people who win in their 40s are not the smartest. They're not the most talented. They're the ones who stopped negotiating,
who stopped waiting for the feeling, who stopped looking for the perfect plan and just moved. Imperfectly, uncomfortably, consistently. And 5 years from now, they'll be somewhere completely different. Not because they got lucky, but because they were willing to be uncomfortable today for freedom tomorrow. You don't need a different life. You need different decisions. And you don't need to make them all at once. You just need to make one today. And then honor it tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, until it's not a decision anymore, until it's just who you are. Someone who builds, someone who stays, someone who doesn't wait. Your 40s will pass whether you act or not. The question is, what will you have built by the time they're over? And will you look back with pride or regret? The clock is already running, and it's not stopping. So what are you going to do?